Everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be going over the Enchiridion, at least my personal Enchiridion. It is Heroes Saturday. So we're going to examine a little bit of the feminine aspect in myth and how the feminine aspect in myth also echoes the masculine-feminine relationship in our stories as we are per se, and how as we are given a role, like gender, biologically, or whatnot, what our duty is to fulfill those roles in the relationship. So we'll be going over that a little bit, and I hope you join me in this process. So it's a beautiful Saturday. The cat is on my lap, purring contently. Hopefully no in my face hair coating montages today, which is ever the case. But anyway, we're going to go into a little bit of the feminine, how the feminine role in reality interacts with the masculine and maybe interacts with itself as well. The thing about this, the Enchiridion, at least my own, it's nothing too substantial. It's basically my notes that I've taken from Joseph Campbell and a few from Carl Jung, and I'm getting better at it. I'm starting out with the hero with 1,000 faces, and these are things worthy of going over. And when you read these things, at least when I read them, it reminds me of the truth of the interaction of story itself. Because you cannot find out what it is you're supposed to do in any aspect of your imagination, purpose, duty, however you want to look at it, in life itself. You can't figure out what to do unless there's a story assigned with it. Like, just because you know money exists, well, that doesn't tell you what to do with it. You need some kind of context around that. And there's a story there, subject and predicate, however you want to look at it. It's even built into language, obviously. So some of these statements that I have written down are taken out of context. We can still put a context around them. I kind of try to jot down the highlights. And so why would you do that? Why would you hand copy another book? Well, first off, it puts you in a proper relationship with the language itself, gives you time to think about it. You can have a relationship with story or with anything, really. I have a relationship with this bottle. I drink water out of it. That's our relationship. That's also a story. Interesting how that works, right? Even in something so small as that. But I wrote down the things that really called out to me, and I think call out to everybody whenever you're looking into anything. So this is talking about the Lady of the House. The Lady of the House of Sleep is a familiar figure in fairy tale and myth. She is the incarnation of the promise of perfection, the soul's assurance that at the conclusion of its exile, in a world of organized inadequacies, the bliss that once was known will be known again. Time has sealed her away, yet she is dwelling still, like one who sleeps in timelessness at the bottom of this timeless sea. So a couple of examples for that is obviously Sleeping Beauty. That's the goal. That's like the desire for perfection. And we roughly all kind of start out as that, right? The feminine body in a biological sense is wired for the infant and their heightened sense of empathy to empathize with the child's needs. That's our start, every one of our starts. But that's also the desire of the masculine, because that's what you're pursuing after, and in the depths of the sea, that's way far into the unknown. And it could be dangerous down there. It's like the aim of perfection. It talks about how does time seal that away? How does time seal her away? Well, that's like the aging process as well. There needs to be a growth of maturity from the adult with the motherly figure to actually progressing toward adulthood, at least for in the masculine aspect, to recognize the feminine beauty for what it is worth pursuing. And even beyond our mortality, that's how you extend yourself, if you want to look at it from a DNA perspective, beyond your own life. And that's like an aim beyond the finite. And that's the feminine, and she's asleep. She might need rescued, she might need woken up, she might need some sort of agency put toward her in the proper sense, because women, the feminine is also the gateway. She's the one who says no. And she should say no if she can judge the masculine not treating her improperly. And you can even take this back to like a mathematical sense when you look at all the laws we have established in our galaxy, and because these are just patterns that we lay upon things. If gravity affected light beyond how it affects it right now, like just this lamp over here which barely illuminates my face in my poorly lit computer room, if I turn the light on, suddenly gravity would be sucked toward it. Well, if that was a law that would apply to everything, that would be really weird, and reality itself, because of how light would interact with reality, would not be as it is. It has to interact properly for reality just to exist as it is. So the feminine also, which is, I would say, reality itself, has to be interacted with the masculine properly. Otherwise, things just don't work out. And then love in its most innocent and natural state would not exist either. Love has to be voluntary. And love has to have an option to say no. Otherwise, it's not love at all. It's either you're like, it's forced upon rape, obviously, or you're an automaton, you're a robot with no free will. But love can only happen when free will is involved, so you need to have that negative aspect to it. And that's like our ever-searching quest as well when it comes to like propagating the species, the masculine and feminine relationship. She is ever sleeping at the bottom of the sea. It's an ever orbiting circle, something like that. And this is, again, the hero's journey when you go down and you're in the depths. And sometimes you go down because the feminine chaos and the feminine beauty, they can be alluring. And to come back with them after seeking perfection in the depths, because oftentimes if you want to seek self-improvement, any kind of improvement whatsoever, you have to look at things you don't want to look at, or maybe you don't think you should. You have to be brave in that aspect. And the feminine itself is like the ultimate judgment of nature for the masculine sense of it. And she's just as intimidating as she is beautiful. That's like the more beautiful the beauty behind the dragon, the more devastating and fierce the dragon is to fight. And this makes a lot of sense. And women might not ever understand this, so I'm trying to explain it as best I can. The more attractive a woman is, the harder it is to even get up the courage to talk to her and let your intentions known. This is very much a young man's feeling, but it's still ingrained in my DNA. And then the job of the feminine is to maybe test the masculine. See if he's worthy of you. And if you know how fierce you are, you know how equipped you are, you know how beautiful you are at the same time, you will test him maybe harshly. Maybe you'll test him easily if he, fits your description of a hero, one who protects, one who can pursue. Woman in the picture language of mythology represents the totality of what can be known. I don't know how often you guys play Legend of Zelda, but that's roughly what that story is repeated over and over again. You play as Link all the time in that game. And if you're missing out on this, I apologize for the analogy, but that you play as another character. Zelda is the pursuit, Legend of Zelda, because you're trying to save her kingdom, save the world, but it's all pursuing her. How you're doing this, whether it be Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, doesn't matter. So what does that mean by the totality of what can be known? Maybe it's like a eternal quest for truth itself. That is from a finite linear perspective, uniting the unknown and the known. You will always be on that track, and that's another way of looking at heaven. When people talk about heaven per se, well, do you really know what you're talking about? Is it going to be sensual paradise? That's where the Quran goes with it. Is it going to be just a higher form of being with less call to your senses? That's the Jainistic or the karmic cycle. You want to stay up there as long as you can. Don't come back as a human. That's actually a step down. Or is it like the song by Tool, Lateralis? Is it an ever fractaling out of growth and adventure? And things just get more and more serious and more intense and more rewarding the higher you go. And I think we can really feel that as we mature. Things get a bit more serious as you get older. You get more responsibility. Oftentimes it's thrust upon you. Or you can go out and seek it. It seems like you have a choice between voluntary or involuntary responsibility. That's your choice. You get it whether you like it or not. But that's also like the natural progression of life in a biological sense. You grow up, you mature, you are with a mate, and then you have kids. And that is involved with the agency and the masculine pursuing the feminine. And the feminine allowing herself to be pursued. And there's a reason why I think psychologically that women are more agreeable than men. Because they have every reason to say no. Men are they will never live up to your ideal hero standards, ever. So you need to maybe empathize and forgive them for being exactly what they are. Sinful human beings who fall short of even their own ideals. I know I do for mine. I know there's a lot of other things I should be doing. I'm going to try my best to aim higher and higher. And that's like a growth thing as well. As we men and women, because we all have both of these inside of us, we're just more of one than the other more often. But we all have this self-disciplined ideal that we know we should do. Everybody knows there's something they should be doing more than what they are. It's like a weight we lay upon ourselves. It's a weight that culture maybe lays upon ourselves, depending upon the roles we have. And though women are the gatekeepers of life itself, it seems to me like they need to understand, well, they do understand this. I think everyone understands this. They need to say yes for life to continue. They have to find a reason to say yes for life to continue. And that's another way of maybe empathizing with reality. Like, I'm going to have a child, and every woman offers that child to the world to be sacrificed. Your child's going to grow old and die. That's a reality maybe you don't want to think about, but that's exactly what's going to happen. So what's better than that? What's worse than that? Nothingness? Live for yourself? Well, that's a good way to spell doom and gloom as far as I can tell. The generations just die with you. The hero is the one who comes to know. As he progresses in the slow initiation which is life, the form of the goddess undergoes a series of transfigurations. She can never be greater than himself, though she can always promise more than he is capable of comprehending. She lures, she guides, she bids him burst his fetters, and if he can match her import, the two, the knower and the known, will be released from every limitation. Yeah, I think it's very interesting in the Old Testament scriptures, when a man and a woman got together, it says the man knew his wife. It's very interesting. Like, Adam knew Eve and they had a kid. Like, the known knew the unknown, and through that relationship of the two and their proper roles, life comes about. And that is how life comes about. As you have an adventure, you go out into the unknown. It's not an adventure to wake up, sit in your room, do nothing, and then go to sleep again. That's a recipe for suicide, if I ever heard it. You know what I mean? Like, you need something interesting to happen, something you can deal with, a role you can take on, maybe, something like that. And the hero is the one that comes to know. It's more than just a sexual thing, though. Because the hero, and this could be, again, men or women, because it's built into us, you have to know what is worthy of doing. Know what is worthy of protecting, what is worthy of pursuing. That kind of thing. And this is a slow process. It's a process. It's almost like regulated by time. It doesn't happen in a flash. You learn it by going through life, by interacting with your friends, by traveling to different cultures, by having a relationship with a significant other, by having children, by watching them grow. That's a process, and it takes its time in the proper sense that all time should be taken. It doesn't rush itself, because that would be what unearned knowledge, and I think that's something that Carl Jung said, beware of unearned wisdom. That's like having a psychedelic experience, seeing all these visions and having no idea what to do with them. You were just on a transcended plane, maybe by a chemical, but then you're given wisdom you don't even know how to interpret. It's like speaking in tongues, and you have no idea what you're saying. But what's the point of that, right? So things need to take their time so the known and the unknown can properly coalesce. And our brains are even wired like this with the left and the right side. So I like how it says, she can never be greater than himself. That's the unknown chaos can never be greater than the knower, because she, or chaos, lacks definition without a knower. She can't know she's beautiful unless she's told so, that she's worthy of pursuing and protecting unless that is shown that she is. Because otherwise she just dies of despair in the jungle instead of being in the garden, which is made for her as well as him, but tended to by him. She bids him burst his fetters, and if you can match or import the two, the knower and the known will be released from every limitation. That's like if he can understand her at a rate that she needs to be understood. If he can adapt to time, as time takes itself to, to be known by the finite perspective of consciousness, and things don't get away from him, and he loses focus on what he should be paying attention to, namely the beauty of the feminine, the chaos, the unknown. If he can match that, if he equips himself with the known and goes after her, because you could also look at pursuing the feminine as maybe the knowledge of what a healthy biological female looks like. And that's like ingrained in you. It's not something you're consciously thinking of. It's ingrained in your very biology, this flesh that you have. Every species knows what to look for in the other species, but they don't consciously articulate it. Once you articulate it, it kind of loses its luster, kind of loses its agency and pull. It's something that just is, but it's also bounced off of history. And finally, the meeting of the goddess, who is incarnate in every woman, is the final test of the talent of the hero to win the boon of love, charity, which is life itself, enjoyed in the encasement of eternity. And I agree with this. This is, again, a little maybe difficult for the feminine to understand, but not really. Actually, I think this is more difficult for the masculine to grasp, that a goddess is in every woman. We are all sons and daughters of God, even if you want to go in the Christian sense of it, and there's a sense of divinity on us as well. And this is like being made in the image of God. And God is pretty scary. The more I think about it and contemplate it and just mull over the concept of the great chaos that's even greater than good and evil, whatever that is, the more afraid I get of that. And that's maybe like the proper fear of God itself. But women do have this magical ability of life, and it can be, you can call it whatever you want, but it is literally the ability to create life in their very being. That is a power. It's like a superhuman power. Men obviously don't have that. We can just engage with the outside world. Life itself, the engagement would be impossible without. And that's like a goddess property. And she can say no to that. Like, you know what I mean? That's quite fierce. That's quite intense. That's also noble and worthy of protecting. And that is the final test. After you have developed your skill set, after you have maybe fought a bunch of dragons, after you have, tamed the wilderness, fought the beasts that are worthy of fighting, you can still be a deplorable person, and the feminine will reject you. The idea is you be competent in things you do in the world and culture, and you're willing to make life itself continue. That's a noble hero, and that's a noble feminine judgment. Because nothing crushes a man more than being rejected by a girl. You can say it doesn't bother you, but you'd be kind of lying to yourself, at least in some sense. But the boon of love does come with, life itself enjoyed as the encasement of eternity. That is, life continuing, in an infinite, finite sense. So however heaven looks, however you want to picture that, regardless, in the middle, when we have our story, and this is the story being written, it is encased in eternity if that would continue in an infinite sense. But that is kind of up to us and how we deal with culture and how the masculine treats the feminine. And has to be proper. And I always had this theory where, like, cultures live and die and grow and stagnate based on their treatment of the feminine. The masculine culture, treatment of the feminine itself. So, like in Saudi Arabia, they had the peak of their civilization in the scientific age about the 12th or 13th century. That's also when Sharia law came in, and every woman had to clothe themselves head to toe. They haven't really grown much since then. They kind of got stuck there. Meanwhile, over here in the West, and maybe Europe more so, the feminine is desacralized. That allowed us for growth, but then we take things to an absurd level. Like, you can be whatever you want to be. Literally, think about it. You can do shadow clone jutsu, sure. Go ahead. You can be a woman, you can become a dog. Just do it because you think you can. And heaven forbid someone says you can't. That's absurdity. That is absolutely absurd. You can't bounce it off reality, because it's not reality. Biology doesn't change just because you think just because I get my arm cut off and I think it should grow back, doesn't mean it's gonna. Reality does not work like that. And it's absurd to think otherwise. But because we desacralize the feminine, pornography, women can dress however they want, their bodies are just objects to be looked at, and in our advertisements we use that as well to draw the eyes and draw the attention from the masculine. There is mystery and beauty there, but when it's laid open, when the dragon no longer puts up a fight, when culture lies to the beauty of the feminine, to the ones that are literally the gatekeepers of life, and says, you are worth more than life continuing. Don't have kids. Well, that's us getting exactly what we deserve for not sacralizing the feminine, for not saying she is worthy of protection. Feminism actually rises up and tends to fight against this as well, because they believe men and women should be on equal terms, as if making money for a corporation and building your own house is better than anything else, better than dealing with the masculine, better than having life continuing. And you just live for yourself. Well, that's literally living for the finite and living for death. If that's your goal, that's not encased in eternity. That's doomed to death. And in the hero's journey, when you start appearing good to the unknown, well, that's it. There's no returning. There's no seeing the grandchildren. It's all about you. I really think this is encased in every single story, at least the ones that call interest to us, in every myth that's ever existed. The relationship between the masculine and the feminine, it's beyond a love story. It's how life is lived. If you thought this was really interesting, you want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes, click this video up here that YouTube recommends, and we can continue this journey together.